Alrighty. So, this is the Patreon voted, drawn out. The patrons got to vote on what I drew first for this month, and they picked for me to draw one of my favorite Pokemon starters as a human, and it's Feraligatr. I love Feraligatr, it's super cool. I didn't really have an idea before going into this, which is why the sketch is pretty loose this time, because I hadn't done any pre-planning for this one for some reason. I had been kind of busy, so that's why the sketch ended up kind of loose, and I was kind of just, I'll use the phrase winging it for the design, which is good. You know, sometimes you don't need to spend a whole month planning ahead on what to do with the design. Especially since what I am doing is I'm interpreting Feraligatr into a human, so, you know, this isn't my first rodeo doing that. You know some certain aspects to try to keep in mind. You want to evoke the feel of Feraligatr the most. It's kind of weird that he ended up being so skinny. Like he ended out just real thin, which is weird because Feraligatr is not a slim Pokemon. You know, it's got those really chonky thighs. But I think I'd gotten really caught up in Feraligatr's arms, which are kind of thin, and he kind of just took form from there. I do like how he turns out though. He looks very punk, which is a really fun way to interpret Feraligatr. So for the pose, you know, I didn't really know what I was doing beforehand, and I decided that I wanted it to be fun. I wanted it to kind of be like an action situation that could be on a Pokemon card. Like, this is just a fancy splash art that could get onto a Pokemon card of him doing something vaguely water related. So there'll be water involved with the illustration as well, which is always fun. Water's always fun to work with because it's, like, soft. You know, you don't need harsh lighting on water, so it's always a really different kind of material to illustrate than what I usually do. I really like how Feraligatr's eyes turned out as well, because anytime I can have the excuse to make a character look as tired as possible, I absolutely go with that. and Feraligatr's got like black edging on its eyes, so a perfect excuse to do that. It also works with the sort of punk theme that he's got going on. He looks so British punk to me, you know? So I went with a dude mostly just because Feraligatr tends to feel more masculine to me. Probably because it is really aggressive, but also because most starters are male. I believe for every starter, the ratio is 75% chance of being male to a 25% chance of being female. So yeah, most starters do end up being male. So that's probably why. Also, I'm currently doing a playthrough of Soul Silver, and I picked a Feraligatr as my starter. And I think this guy ended up taking a little bit of inspiration from my Feraligatr that I'm currently playing through the game with. Just a real turd, but in a loving way, you know, like just aggressive and mean. That's the funnest part about interpreting Pokemon, is that you can get to use your own experience with the games in the design. You know, there are tons of Pokemon as human illustrations online. It's like baby's first, I think it's pronounced Jinka, humanization. Everyone does this first for, like, the first time they choose to draw something as a person. Because Pokemon is excellent. and they do convey a lot of, like, personality and character in the Pokemon games. Especially especially nowadays, where you can camp with your Pokemon and they can run around and, you know, you can interact with them a lot more. So it's very easy to sort of put a character onto a Pokemon during a playthrough. So that means, like, no two people draw the same Pokemon as a human the same way. There's a lot of similar elements, especially for more simple Pokemon designs, you know? Like, you'd be hard-pressed to find, like, a Pidgey that doesn't have something looking like wings, you know? A Pikachu as a human will always have the ears and tail, and that's all fine. It's smart that all these artists are incorporating iconic elements of the Pokemon they're rendering into a humanized form. But, you know, despite those similarities, no two human Pokemon ever look the same. And that's just always fun to me. I love seeing how other people would interpret the same concept as me. Because I'm not the only artist on Earth, far from it. There are a lot of people who like to illustrate, and it's really fun seeing how differently people do tackle the same topic. Cause it's really a look into them as a person. You may not have drawn a Feraligatr the same way I did. And that's great, because we're not all the same person. So yeah, I always really like seeing humanized Pokemon. The only thing is, so often I feel like it can be hard to figure out what Pokemon it can be sometimes. And that's just because there are a lot of Pokemon. Like, not necessarily that artists are rendering them poorly, but rather that just I can't remember all 900 plus Pokemon off the top of my head at this point. For Feraligatr's color palette, you'll notice that I saved his pants for last, and it's because I didn't really know what I wanted to do with them. I knew I wanted the jacket to be blue and his shoes to be blue, but I didn't want to arbitrarily put a new color on him anywhere. Like, I didn't want to invent a color to put on him. And I liked the idea of Feraligatr having like snakeskin pants. So I was trying to figure out how to handle that. And I do it by starting with the same shade of blue as the rest of him, and then splotching on with like very kind of splattery effect brushes. Yeah, right here. I layer a lot of different tones across him. I'm gonna admit, it looks a lot more like, kind of like sequins leggings than snakeskin, but it does a good enough job of what I wanted, which was a still blue, like, article of clothing, but without it just being the same thing as the other things on him. So yeah, I'm really happy with this color palette. I tend to be an offender of wanting to break up character colors a lot. Like, I'm reluctant to have someone wearing, like, all the same color all the way down. I'm usually more inclined to, like, keep the shirt and shoes the same color and make the pants something else, or to, like, break up that one consistent color somehow. And I'm trying to get out of that habit, because while that does look good for, you know, a fair amount of the time, sometimes it's unnecessary. You can incorporate all the same color down across a character. You don't always have to give them a belt to break up the colors. You don't always have to make their pants or their skirt or whatever a different shade. So yeah, always a learning experience with art, and that's the fun part now, isn't it? So for some reason, I don't know why I did this, I decided to just completely finish the water first. I guess because I wanted to know that it was just done, because it was, while I do think it's fun to work with water because I don't get to very often, and I get to use a different sort of method than I usually do, since I have less experience illustrating water, it is harder, you know? It's not as secondhand as it would be to just, like, to do my normal stuff how I illustrate humans, which I do more often. So yeah, I think I just wanted to make sure that I was confident with how the water looked. Because also that would help figure out how I was going about finishing the Feraligatr himself. Like how much light is in the water, you know, all that kind of fun stuff. I'm pretty happy with how it turns out, I'm gonna be honest. I very rarely let myself be unhappy with an illustration by the end. I can notice, like, mistakes. Like, I'm gonna spoil it in that there is a mistake in this picture, and it annoys me a lot. But that's another thing, is as an artist, you have to also know when to let a picture be finished. I didn't catch on that I had left an illustration error until after I had finished the picture. And while it's not the hardest thing on earth to go back and change one very minor thing, I think it's important to let yourself, as an artist, let it go sometimes. To just accept that, oh dang, that part of the clothing I colored in the wrong color. Oh well, and live with it, because you can't let yourself linger on a piece of art for all eternity, because eventually you have to let it go. You know, no piece of art is ever going to be completely perfect. And so, while I understand this idea of I'm starting over because I don't like how it looks anymore, or no, I'm not posting this picture yet because it's not perfect enough. You know, it's not reductive to think that way, but I think it is helpful to let yourself finish flawed pictures and then start working on a new one and improve that way. Because if you're just stuck trying to finish the same picture for all eternity, or even for just a decent chunk of time, like if you spend an entire month on a picture and then you're looking at it and you're like, I don't like this, I'm starting over. It's like, maybe walk away from that picture, because if you're struggling with it, it's okay to put an idea on the back burner and come back to it once you feel like you are competent enough to be able to illustrate it the way you want it to be done. But yeah, that's just me. As always, there's no one right way to do art. If you like spending lots and lots of time making sure your picture is perfect finally before you post it, then that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. A couple of minor things I want to mention with Feraligatr's design. He's got the heels of his shoes are white because I wanted it to look like the claws on his like bottom feet, and that's also why he's got his really long nails and the white like under sleevey things on his arms as well. Those are his claws. I really love that. You probably noticed that I went with this pale skin tone because it is basically the yellow that's across Feraligatr's like jaw and torso. It had started out very yellow. I do alter it to look more human skin tone and less like a Simpsons character. And also the insides of his shoes are red because I wanted to sort of imply the spikes that are at the tips of a Feraligatr's tail, you know? I didn't want to give him a long tail-like element, like a long belt or something like that, but rather, I wanted to keep his overall sort of design pretty sleek, but still wanted to pull that red that is in his hair back to the bottom of him, like how the tail does with the Pokemon. And I don't know why I decided on a yellow background. Gold, I guess it is Heart Gold and Soul Silver that I've been playing. It certainly looks better than a silver background would have. Kind of a warm palette to pull out all these blues. Anyway, that's a lot of jabber-john. And I hope you had fun.